jailed in Dubai for possessing synthetic cannabis or spice may be no clearer today, but the government has raised their alleged mistreatment with the President of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, on day 2 of his visit to the UK. That much we do know. A spokeswoman for Number 10 added that the two leaders had agreed to continue their close engagement on important issues in the relationship. It's also understood that further discussions will take place at a lower level. Mr Cameron has made no comment since the meeting, but this morning on ITV's Daybreak programme he did address the issue.
What we've said, and the point I'll make today, is that we think there needs to be a proper independent investigation into these allegations, into what happened. And that's the first step, really, of working out what needs to happen next. But look, we have a very good relationship with the United Arab Emirates. I'm delighted that they're here on this state visit this week. Very deep economic and trading relations. We've also got over 100,000 British people choose to live in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, so our countries are very close, but nothing should be off limits in these discussions. You know, they will tell us of their concerns about anything Britain might do, and we should always be frank in talking to them about concerns we have, and that's what I'll do today.
Well, those very good relations include trade amounting to nearly £15 billion a year. A £6 billion contract for the oil company Shell, announced last night, was hailed as a fantastic outcome by Mr Cameron. The UAE is also buying British when it comes to telecoms, power generating equipment, electrical and military goods. And let's not forget, the UAE has a foothold here, from owning Manchester City FC to the XL Centre in London, the Hotels Group Travelodge, 15% of Gatwick Airport. The list goes on. Well, there was no Foreign Office Minister to talk to us this evening, but Richard Otway chairs the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, and I asked him if, given the human rights issues, it was appropriate for Sheikh Khalifa to receive such an all-embracing welcome.
Well, he's a head of state, and he was invited here by Her Majesty the Queen, and I think he's entitled to the respect that we give to heads of state. Nonetheless, you make a perfectly valid point about abuses of human rights in his country, and as I understand it, the Foreign Secretary has raised those with him during a meeting earlier today.
Any idea to what extent he's raised those with him? Because obviously it's easy enough to say, yes, we've got that issue, haven't we? Let's move on to business.
I don't have any more insight than you do, but I've known William Hague for many, many years, and I'm pretty sure in private he will not pull his punches. It is the policy of the Foreign Office in all these human rights cases to actually be quite tough in private, and I emphasise private, rather than in public, because that way I think we are more likely to actually achieve results than we would do if we make a huge hullabaloo about it and posture to a certain extent.
The dialogue of values which has been published on the back of this visit between the UAE and the British government, virtually the first line talks about values such as tolerance. That seems a little awkward, doesn't it, given that the lack of tolerance is one of the issues that the UAE is being accused of at the moment?
Allegations are made, and I'm quite sure those making the allegations believe it, but we have to wait and see whether they stand up in court. If you are a citizen of Dubai, you are opposed to drug abuse and to the trafficking of drugs, and whatever you have to say, drugs were found in the car these people were using, and they have some explaining to do.
There is an awful lot of money at stake, isn't there? And I suppose it's also fair to say economically times are hard. Do you feel that this is one of those customers that you simply have to work with under almost any circumstances?
Well, if you look at the human rights report that the government's just published, you'll see that there are over 20 countries of concern. These are all big countries with big economies. Now, if we get too hair-shirt about this and say we are not going to do business with you unless your human rights standards conform to ours, we are going to be a pretty isolated country.
Would it be wise not to be selling small arms and certain weapons to a government when we have some concerns about whether they might be involved in torture?
Well, we have very strict arms export controls, and if the sale of arms does not comply with those regulations, then of course they should not be sold. We are traditionally a trading nation. We have no natural resources, and I think we have an international reputation for selling this type of equipment, and I think we have to learn to live with it.
We've talked about the British problem, if you like, but of course there are other issues. There are 94 people currently standing trial, and that was essentially for attempting to overthrow the government and undermine the establishment, which many of their supporters believe is simply not what they were trying to do at all. And again, allegations of torture have been made there. Is there a different way that Britain should react to different circumstances, non-British citizens?
I think we have to call for the due process of law. We have a similar situation in Bahrain at the moment. And I think that you have to recognise that these countries have laws, and if those laws are broken, then people will be charged and, if necessary, convicted. We are entitled to ask that they be treated in accordance with the norms of international law, and I think that is where we actually have to let matters stand.
Richard Ottaway. Rori Donaghy is a campaign manager of the Emirates Centre for Human Rights based here in the UK, and he joins me now in the studio. Rori Donaghy, do you have a problem with the Sheikh being here at all?
No, I think this is a good opportunity to raise lots of issues beyond the trade talks that we've just heard. I think that this is a great opportunity to raise not only the case of 3 British citizens who have been tortured in Dubai, but also the case of the 94 as mentioned. I think it's interesting to hear that we should call for due process to be observed in the UAE by Richard Ottaway, because due process has not been observed in the case of the 94. The trial has been labelled as fundamentally unfair and a mockery of justice by Human Rights Watch. That's because allegations of torture have gone uninvestigated. The public trial has been closed to foreign observers and foreign media.
So on that basis, how do you feel about the evident drive to do good business with the UAE?
I think that when it comes to selling them arms is where it's really crucial. The UAE have traditionally shielded themselves from criticism by holding out the carrot of multi-billion-pound arms deals. We've seen the same with a recent trip to Washington by the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, and they're also in talks with France, all for very similar arms deals. They use this to shield themselves against criticism. That's what problem one. Problem two is that the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, as exposed by New York Times, has a private mercenary army made up of Colombian soldiers who, amongst other reasons, has been set up to take control of civil uprisings. We need to be very careful.
Right, but let's look at what the government is doing. As Richard Ottaway put it, keeping it private is often the best way to go about it. Creating a hullabaloo can be the worst way.
When it comes to British citizens, I think that the population here would want to see that our government is going to protect the rights of our citizens. So far, by giving him the red carpet treatment whilst there are 3 boys sitting in Dubai being tortured, that's just not going to wash for 1 million British tourists who visit Dubai every single year. Something public needs to be said.
But there is a problem, isn't there? A, you can't say we won't do business with any country that creates issues for us. Where would we be left then? That seems a reasonable argument. And secondly, of course, this is also in a volatile region, and we do need the UAE to assist in strategic terms.
I agree. The thing is if the UAE is to remain a stable part of a region that has traditionally been unstable, it needs to engage with citizens who call for mild political reforms. The trial of the 94 is a watershed moment for the UAE. If they do not engage with citizens now, they are going down the path that all the other Arab dictators went down throughout the Arab Spring. We need to impress upon them the importance of engaging citizens and following through with due process.
Right, well, in brief then, what should the UK do? I hear what you say, that we should make that point, but should we cease in any of the trading deals?
I think that when it comes to arms deals, we shouldn't be selling them arms. They cannot be trusted. The Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi has this army. They cannot be trusted. Beyond that, fine, engage with them in trade, but make sure that we speak publicly to ensure that the 94 go through a fair trial and these 3 Britons receive justice.
Rori Donaghy, thanks very much.